Hey guys, it's Ollie from Rad Season. I'm stoked to be joined today by one of the original power surfers, surf coach, entrepreneur, and co-founder of the World of Waves TV series and Surfing.com, Ian Kanga Cairns. Ian, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, hi Ollie. How you doing, mate? It's kind of
pretty
really,
good, thanks.
it's kind of really cool to be live all over the world here on our computers. I can remember fax machines and telexes, and being afraid to spend the money to do a reverse charge phone call to call home to my mum and dad, and so this era of 50 years of technological advance to enable us to do this is kind of unbelievable.
It's cool, huh?
Yeah,
And
totally cool.
I mean, so where are you at the moment? You're over in California, right?
Yeah, I live in Laguna Beach in California. I've lived here in America for like 30 years this year.
Okay.
And, I like America because it's really similar to Australia. The cultural background and everything is really similar. So, and it's just, you can get a lot of stuff done in America. And I like to do stuff.
And I guess I'd love to take it back to where you grew up in Western Australia, and I'm just really curious of how surfing started for you. I mean, where did it all begin?
I was living in Sydney, body surfing. My dad taught me to body surf in Avalon, South Avalon, in front of I borrowed surfboards. My brother was a member of the surf club. I borrowed boards out of there, and I surfed Little Avalon on a kneeboard, a Pipo plywood kneeboard I'd made. And the surf club was, you followed the rules, you did your Sunday on the beach, protecting people within the flags. And then one day I paddled up to the north end of Avalon, and that's where the surfies hung out. And this was this sort of ragtag bunch of people that were completely different. And I just went to myself, whoa, these are my people. Because I was always, and have always been, probably to the day I die, will always be at odds with rules and culture, which sounds really weird because I created the ASP rulebook. But I just love the independence and the freedom of what surfing really means, and how it's a global environmental of people that just are different, and everyone celebrates these differences. And there's a home in surfing for misfits, kind of like myself. And so it's not organized and structured. The fundamental thing is that you can just travel and grab a few waves, and you don't need a lot of money, and all of these things. There's a freedom to that. And that freedom is what sort of kindled my love for surfing. So that summer of 1966, we got in the Falcon and drove from Avalon to Cottesloe in Perth in Western Australia. My dad had got a job up north, and we drove across the Nullarbor, which was at that time, it's like 1,200 miles of dirt road. And you had to check in with the gas stations along the way, just to petrol stations, to tell them, oh, the Cairns family is driving west, and we'll check in at the next place just to make sure we got there. Because middle of summer, it was like 1,000 degrees. It was like driving in the Sahara. And it was dangerous back in those. Cars would break down, people would die. So anyhow, we lobbed in Cottesloe, and we'd insisted my dad got a house. We were 5 houses from the beach at Cottesloe, at a surf break called Isolated. And so there was a golf course over the road, this surf break 5 houses away, and I had the surfboard that was strapped on the top of the Falcon that I'd got for Christmas the year before. I got my first surfboard in Christmas of 65. We drove to Western Australia in January of 66, and I started surfing on my 9'7" longboard out front at Isolated. And so literally my entire surfboard career has been based out of Western Australia.
Yeah. And I mean, what was the scene like there? So going from the East Coast and then getting over to Western Australia, you know, what was it like when you were a grom, right? When you were younger?
Well, you know, I would walk down the beach, you know, jump in the water at Isolated, and there was locals. So of course, I'm like a nobody, just some grom kid getting in the way. And Australia has this really cool thing, which is the surf clubs, the surf riding clubs, where all of a sudden, you know, guys, I guess I started to get good pretty quickly. And guys from the local surf club in that area called Southern Surf Riders sort of took me under their wing. And all of a sudden, I now had friends in the lineup. We went and competed against other surf clubs up and down the coast. And I found this really neat, nurturing group of people that really, I found a home with them. And, you know, so my first trip down to Margaret River from Cottesloe was with Southern Surf Riders. And they had, you can get this in the caravan park at Prevelly Park at Margaret River, they had a shack with these bunk beds in there. And so we could go down and stay in the Southern Surf Riders shack at Prevelly Park and live there for free and, you know, just go surfing at Margaret River. And it was just really magical, because if the change between what Perth is kind of like being at Newquay or being at Laguna Beach. Like 2 days a year, it's okay. But 200 miles away from Cottesloe is Hawaii, with big open ocean reef breaks and giant waves. Like when I first rocked up and I saw, like I can remember the first day I saw Yallingup. And Yallingup is, you know, really a cool reef break. It's a little bit like Mellow Sunset. And then that's where we stayed, and we had surf contests there, state titles and stuff. When I went to Margaret River is more powerful than Yallingup. And it was like this step up. I can remember the first day I surfed North Point, Quirramup Bay. All of these particular waves, which in the pantheon of incredible surf breaks, are right up there. I mean, one day WSL will have an event at North Point of Quirramup when it's 10 feet. It would be the best surf event ever, because that wave is so incredibly amazing. And so Western Australia, these are the waves I grew up in. And we grew up surfing these waves. You know, you're 400 or 500 yards offshore, you lose your board, you swim to the beach. It was literally exactly like being in Hawaii, but not quite as dramatic.
And that was during the whole sort of surfboard revolution as well, right? When, I mean, you were saying when you started off on a 9.6 and then
my first board
got shorter.
Yeah, it was 9.7 Dale. We bought it out of a surf shop at Avalon. My older brother and sister and my aunt bought the board because my parents didn't want me to be a surfer. And I mean, that's another whole story. Like if you were a surfer, you were a bum and a drug addict. And I mean, now people encourage their kids to be surfers, right? I mean, it's a completely different world. But if you can get this, my first board was the 9.7. My first brand new board was a 9'6". These boards weighed 30 or 40 pounds. My third board was my first sponsored board. It was an 8-foot V bottom from Jacko Surfboards. One of my first mates at Cottesloe, Artie Sherburn, surfed for John Jakovich at Jacko Surfboards. And I got this board and we got the first V bottom. So I went from 9.6 log to an 8-foot V bottom performance surfboard. And that was the revolution, the shortboard revolution. and such a dramatic change where you went from riding the board to riding the wave. And because there wasn't much riding the wave on a 9'6" log with a big old fin on it, whereas these V bottoms, you're able to do the big bottom turns. Remember the Plastic Fantastic movies with Nat and Bob McTavish doing big turns at Honolulu? You know, there's such a revolution in terms of surfboard design and how you surfed. And I was in the middle of that. And I just posted on LinkedIn a video of the 1969 Australian titles. I ended up coming fourth with Wayne Lynch surfing at Margaret River. This was the radical change. The year before, 1968, I'd gone on my first West Australian team to Sydney on my 8'6" V bottom. This change of surfing was so incredibly dramatic and radical, from longboards to shortboards. And that was the explosion of shortboard surfing. Everything we see today evolved from that moment.
Nice. And how would you say surfing over in WA, and because it gets pretty big over there, you know, it's not like surfing in Sydney, right? So I mean, like, how would you say that prepared you for Hawaii?
Well, it was because I'm big, and I inherited the Australian traditional surfing style, which is bottom turn, top turn, carve, power, and flow. I responded to riding big waves. It just became natural. And so, you'd be shocked at how often it's big. I mean, the shocking thing about Western Australia is how few days of the year it's under head high. It's literally December and January, like half of those days might be under head high and you go to the beach breaks. The rest of the time it's overhead and you're surfing a reef break. And often, I mean, if you were at 10 or 12 foot North Point, Margaret River is 20 feet. Because North Point's a little bit sheltered by the South Point headland. So we were just riding giant, powerful waves. I mean, I got photographs of me and a friend of mine, Adrian Wilson, paddling up a wave at Margaret River, and you would swear it was a reverse photo of Waimea. It's just that big. And so I was surfing all those. So my first day in Hawaii, I surfed Velzyland in the morning, and that afternoon I paddled out at sunset, and it was a rising swell. And all of a sudden, I'm out at big Margaret River, but flipped, like a mirror image, with this big peak and a right-hander on it. And it was just like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. I kind of know what I'm doing here.
What was the reception like? So, I mean, because there was a group of you that went over, right? So, like,
I actually commented yesterday on something for the Australian Institute of Sport. My brother's father-in-law was one of the guys that wrote the thesis for the Australian Institute of Sport, and it's all up there. And when you're talking about academics and PhD sports scientists sort of managing the flow of surfing, I realized that one of the real fundamental essences of why Australians are good sportsmen is our mongrel attitude. The piss and vinegar. You know, I grew up poor. You know, not desperately poor in the favela, but I realize now that, you know, my generation of Australians were kind of pretty poor. And how did we make something better for ourselves? My father went and became an engineer at university. My brother's a geologist. My sister ran hospitals as a nurse. Me, I had to do something and I had an aptitude for surfing. So this was my way out. And so for me to succeed, I had to adopt that mongrel Aussie attitude, the chip on the shoulder. And it's easy. I had a chip on the shoulder from being from WA, where no one gave a shit about West Australians. So I had to prove myself in Australia first. And then when you go to Hawaii, you're up against, you've spent years watching surf movies and looking at Surfer magazine with all of these famous Hawaiian surfers. Like, what do you have to do to establish yourself in that place against those people in those waves? So my generation of Australians, we reverted back to our mongrel, piss and vinegar, fuck it, I'm going to win no matter what kind of cultural background.
Yeah.
And it turns out that maybe that didn't fly too good.
Because this was sort of who was like it was yourself, Rabbit, Sean Thompson from South Africa, MP. I mean, it was kind of, and like, were they sort of looking at the style, going, like what are these guys? What are these guys up to? When you're coming over with this attitude, or like,
you know what? We didn't think about it.
Yeah,
there were just incredible waves down the street. The first house that the first winter I lived at U'upuola was Sunset Point. More up on the Veldsy end. We could surf out at backyards, but run straight down the beach to check Sunset Beach. And it was Paul Nielsen, Ricky Nielsen, myself, and Grant Oliver, Dapper Oliver, in the same house. Me, Paul Nielsen, and Ricky Nielsen each had a single bed in the same room, and Dapper slept on the couch. And we were renting a bed off this Australian couple, and it was kind of room and board, right? And so we were Ricky Nielsen, Paul Nielsen, Ian Cairns, and Grant Oliver. You couldn't imagine a more competitive household, right? And so we would run down the beach and check the waves and run back. And if I got back first, I would eat all the cereal. So there was this constant and competitive in everything. There's nothing that we didn't want to compete with each other about. It was just, so it was, our alarm clock was Grant Oliver. You would hear the kettle whistling for him to make a cup of tea, and you would hear the match strike where he lit up his first durry. Like, he'd be smoking a cigarette, drinking a cup of tea, getting ready to go surfing. Seriously, it's a different world, right? That's Grant Oliver. And in that household, one day we went down to Haleiwa and surfed, and all of us surfed, and we were pretty good, and we surfed equally. The next day, Grant Oliver and Paul Nielsen were in the Smirnoff, which at that time was the unofficial world championship, and it was 10 to 12 foot Haleiwa. And Paul Nielsen won the Smirnoff and became world champion, and Grant Oliver was third. That's in my household. And so you can see that overnight, off the plane from the world titles in San Diego, these Aussies hit town, and they were pretty darn good. And then the South Africans were great too, and they had just as much of a chip on their shoulder. Sean, massively competitive, Michael Thompson, competitive, Johnny Parman, Gavin Rudolph. I mean, really, really good surfers at Sunset. And this entire group of people, we literally were all attracted to America because we were in the ISA World Games at San Diego. Mm-hmm. And we competed in those things, and PT did good. I mean, I did horrible because it was really small. But the moment we left San Diego, we flew directly to Hawaii, and it was on. Like any wave that moved, like we were on it. And I guess we sort of, I mean, there was a very clearly established hierarchy, you know, the ICAOs and Ben Iper, who just passed, you know, rest in peace. I mean, these guys were, you know, were surfing icons to us because we'd read about them in the magazines. And all of a sudden we're out at Sunset Beach or at Pipeline or Haleiwa with these same guys that were literally heroes of ours. And out surfing with these guys, and Sammy Hawke and Al Chapman, just, I mean, you talk about a menagerie of absolute psychos. It was just kind of really, really cool. And then the Aussies come to town, and, you know, Michael Peterson killed it out there. Peter Townend's first wave at Sunset Beach, he dropped in on me. And then he had a board, this long, stretched out pintail, where Sunset Beach, you get going so fast, you have to wait to slow down to do a turn. And so PT was running out into the flats on this pintail that was going like 10,000 miles an hour. And I'm screaming at him, turn, turn, turn. And somehow he pulled a turn and the lip landed on my head and I got crushed and had another swim at sunset. And that's PT's first ever wave at Sunset Beach. And it was just so, and we would just go for it. I mean, the number of times that, you know, I surfed Waimea was just not many people out. It was just really incredible back then. You know, Sunset was always crowded, but Waimea was not. I mean, get this. I surfed Waimea with Jose Angel. I mean, that name then, people that might know it, but anyone that knows the history of surfing knows that he was a big wave surfer and he died doing free diving. But we're caught inside. I'm not quite caught inside. He's caught inside by a set at Waimea. And instead of bailing his board, he jumps off the back and pushes, holding the tail block, pushes his board through the lip of like a 5-wave set. And I'm just there looking down at him with this massive, like 20 or 25 foot wave, and he's just casually pushing his board through. And I just went, whoa, like there's another level of experience and waterman skill that I need to aspire to. I need to reach these heights of confidence in these conditions that all of these guys have. So that became a journey of how good and comfortable can I become in radical conditions.
We've got a clip of Waimea, if you wouldn't mind, if I could put that on. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it. We can kind of, if you can run us through it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I rode Waimea a lot, and I always took off deeper, and it was on a shorter board. That board's 8'6". It's a Barry Kanaya Puni, very, very narrow swallowtail. That's James Booby Jones taking off in front of me. And that's maybe, I don't know, what do you call it? 20 feet. It's not a big day. But I surfed out there a lot like that, and I always took off, because I'm genetically inclined to always be the deepest guy in the lineup. And so there's always really, because I grew up in reef breaks, there's recognition of different wrinkles and wedges on the wave face that you can use as energy to propel yourself across a wave. And one of the things that was really interesting early on at Sunset was recognition of different styles of surfing. And Barry Kanaya Puni to me was an inspiration in Hawaii because he would take off ultra deep and he would instantly jam a mid-face turn rather than drop straight to the bottom, which was traditional big wave surfing. And that mid-face turn, I've seen used a lot by people that are really, it's actually a very, very important way to actually establish your direction along a wave. And it gets used a lot in, and it's essential actually for a big wave like Mavericks or Piahi to, rather than drop straight to the bottom, you got to get your edge in and begin your progress along a wave. And I learned that from Barry Kanaya Puni. And surfing in Hawaii, you are up against these amazing conditions, and there are people always inventing new things. And I love I love to understand reefs, reef break waves, and how they work on different swell directions and where in the lineup you can be, because, as I said, genetically, I'm inclined to be the absolute deepest guy in the lineup. So at Haleiwa, when I went there, I was the guy that found the peak in front of the bathhouse. And literally you could ride 2 or 3 turns before you got to where normally people were taking off. And coincidentally, that particular strategy of naturally finding these different places, I won 2 World Cups at Haleiwa on big days because I was taking off deeper and riding the wave longer and getting more turns in. And when you watched the latest Vans Triple Crown footage of Haleiwa, you will see John and Jack Robinson riding exactly that same wave in the lineup, taking off way deep, and the positioning of the turns is technically very similar to the kind of waves I was riding and where the positioning of the turns were being done, because the wave dictates that back in the mid-70s. And so it's just really interesting, because now when I watch video, I can see where in the lineup that wave was taken.
Yeah.
And it's part of the whole coaching thing I have in terms of looking at the first and foremost, the guy who rides the best wave has the most chance of winning. Like, everyone knows that. Even though they've changed the judging criteria, if on the WSL, you'll listen to the announcers and they'll just go, that's the best wave of the heat. If you're not on that best wave, you lose. And you can lose to a surfer that is not as good as you. But if you're an okay surfer, and I personally think I'm a pretty good surfer, but I wasn't the absolute best surfer, but I had a natural skill in terms of being able to find interesting and different waves in a lineup.
Yeah.
And those are the sorts of things that I teach first and foremost. Like, understand the lineup that you're going to compete in, and understand the different waves that give you a different look and give you a different opportunity, and build a strategy in the lineup around looking different than the other person by riding different waves.
From studying all the lineups over there, was there a particular favorite spot or wave, that you?
Well, I mean, personally, my 3 were Sunset Beach, Haleiwa, and Waimea. And, I could, I've got a couple of good shots of me at Pipeline, but surfing had not yet progressed enough to do the grab rail pull in off the point of takeoff. And I actually watched the final of Michael Ho and Johnny Boy Gomes at Pipeline, when Michael Ho changed the world of going backside at Pipeline by taking off deep, grabbing the rail, and instead of dropping to the bottom, doing bottom turn, angling the board and taking off deep and getting massive barrels. That right there, Michael Ho single-handedly changed everything for backside surfing. And so now it's actually an advantage to be backside at Pipe.
Yeah.
Imagine just having a life where you've seen all this happen. You've seen the evolution of surfboards and the evolution of how surfing has changed over the years, how it stays the same and how it changes again. I can't even begin to tell you how stoked I am to have been living through this particular period. I mean, I just go through my phone with photographs, and I'm just going, oh, wow. Like, I posted one of me at a Duke contest with Ben Iper when he was young. I guess he was 10 years older than me, so I was 22, he would have been 32. And just the stories that could be told of me standing next to Ben, next to Booby Jones. That photo is wider. There was Larry Bertelman was in that picture. He actually won that event, and I came second. It was at Sunset Beach. I went for it too much, lost my board all the time. Rabbit Bartholomew was my caddy. Like every one of these photos that I look at have these different people, and what are the interactions with those people? What are the stories you can tell? And it's just sort of, I look through that, and it's just sort of like, there are so many amazing stories to be told about these places, about the people, about the contributions they've made to surfing, and how this massive matrix that we have has all been put together in small incremental pieces over 50 years. And it's really, really, really interesting. Like you see the picture behind me.
Yeah, where's that?
This is an artist from Bahia in northern Brazil. There are guys on the, in the middle of the town square there doing capoeira. I love this picture because I actually bought it when Alyssa and I were at an ASP meeting, which I actually finagled to have ASP have a meeting in Rio, because I love Rio, right? Who could not love that energy and the life and these amazing people? And we went to a market on Sunday in Ipanema, and I saw this photo of this picture, and I just went, oh my God, the life and energy and the mixtures of cultures and the mixture of races and just the sheer exuberance and happiness in that painting, to me, screams out Brazil. It's my vision of Brazil is this amazing place with all of these cool people doing incredible stuff. And so could you imagine having the chance to bring Brazil onto the world tour? I mean, I did that. I competed in the Waimea 5000 in 1977 and 78, and then Brazil dropped off the tour. And when I started the ASP, we organized all of these events around the world. I was contacted by Jacques Hele at the Lacanau Surf Club, and Jacques wanted to bring his event onto the ASP World Tour. So that simple connection with the Lacanau Surf Club was the beginning of European connection to the competitive world of surfing. And then Alfio Lagnado, who owns Hang Loose, the Brazilian clothing company, he wanted to have Brazil connected to the ASP World Tour. So Alfio said, well, come down. And we had rules then. You had to put up your prize money. You had to deliver your prize money to ASP, which was 25 grand in those days, before we would guarantee you a spot on the schedule. Because people would put up events and you'd travel to these events and then they wouldn't pay the prize money. Like it was a funky time. And so we had this rule. So Alfio goes, yeah, okay, I'll put up the 25 grand. And I said, I'll come down to Rio and pick it up. So I flew to Rio, and we went to this bank in the middle of the city of Rio. I was with a friend there who ultimately ran ASP for us. And we triple parked our car because parking's hard, right? So we're in the street outside the bank, triple park, and you always have got to leave it out of gear so people can push the cars around. And so we go into the bank, and the bank at that time in Brazil is gnarly. So they've got, a guy with an automatic weapon there who's in this little capsule, bulletproof capsule, that'll have a shootout with bank robbers, right? And so I go in there, and Alfio, withdraws $25,000 and hands it to me in a paper bag. And I'm going, right, you've got a contest on the ASP World Tour, mate. And so I walk outside, and our car is stolen. So here I am in downtown Rio de Janeiro with 25,000 American dollars and no car. So I had to get a taxi, and bad shit can happen in Brazil if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, mate. So I was kind of stressing. But anyhow, I got on the plane, flew home to Los Angeles, put the money in the bank, and the event at Joaquina occurred since the Waimea 5000. It was the first event. It was the first connection of Brazil back onto this world tour, the ASP World Tour. So like to me, when I see someone from Europe do really good on the world tour, or someone from Brazil do really good, I go, Kanga, you helped make that happen. And it's sort of like really, really cool experience to have the ability to influence things in a really positive way.
Yeah.
And so I just look back on all this stuff and it makes me laugh and smile. It's just been really a fun ride.
And like when you look back at it, I mean, what was the reason for creating the rule book and, well, effectively creating professional surfing, creating the association?
Well, if you go back to IPS was started in 1976. And prior to that, I surfed in those events. I surfed in the Amateur Smirnoff in 1972. I won the Smirnoff at Laniakea in 1973. Big Laniakea, northeast swell, long right-handers, big waves, pedal out the back, get the bombs. I mean, how easy can it get? 10-foot Haleiwa when it's perfect. Me and Jeff Hackman, the only two guys catching the outside waves. We came first and second. I had $150 to last the winter, and the entry fee was $100. And a Peruvian surfer, what was his name? Didn't make it. I had to put my $100 down and enter this event. So now I'm literally broke if I lose. And that night, I had $5,000, $5,000 in 1973. Like a brand new Porsche was $6,000. Yeah, it's just in scale. So it was almost like winning $100,000. And I go from being just a nobody to world champion, like in one day, with money in the bank. It's like,
what a great day.
But none of this stuff is an overnight success. So 73, I was 21. So 8 years after being in the Falcon, driving from Sydney to Cottesloe, I had risen to the top in Western Australia, risen to the top in Australia, risen now to the top in the world. I mean, could that kid, 13-year-old kid that wanted to do well in the Western Australian Championship ever imagine that was possible? It just seems a completely unreal journey to me. But it just happens because you learn skills, because you won't quit when things are hard, because you'll just keep on fighting. You'll claw your way up the ladder. You'll take risk. What kind of risk does that take? Does it take risk in terms of, because everyone in Western Australia told me I'd never make it. Just a very select group of people said, well, have a go. Like, have a go. It's a pretty, if you want.
That was probably driving you though, right? If they were saying, oh yeah,
Well, you always need to look for motivation.
Yeah.
And being told you can't do something is a great motivator. Losing is a motivator. Being broke is a motivator. These are all energetic forces that you can marshal and pull together and pull it into your psyche, and you just go, no fucking way. You will not beat Kanga. And once you do that a few times, it becomes a habit, a positive habit of the impossible is totally possible. Can you imagine that? anything you dream is possible. You just got to get off your ass and go for it. And you've got to tolerate the pain. And you have to work harder than anyone has ever worked before to succeed. And this comes all the way back to the concept of this piss and vinegar, the kinds of motivations that drive people to succeed. And you look at in countries like Brazil, where Jadson or Adriano have come from a less than wealthy background, and they've been driven to succeed, and they've succeeded beyond their expectations. And to me, that's an amazing illustration of people overcoming problems and succeeding. And these are the kinds of stories that happen over and over again in surfing. And those are the stories to me that are just more interesting than the who's leading the points race.
Yeah.
It's in depth. Who are these people, and what was their journey, and what motivations do they have, and what did they overcome to achieve? And these are the really, really cool stories. And now, because I've been involved in stand-up paddling, I got involved in stand-up paddling. I was coaching the US surfing team, and we won a couple of gold medals in the Masters and also in the World Games. And then they said, well, we're going to do stand-up paddling. And I thought, that's cool, because I'd been doing it a little bit because I was making some softboards with Nev Hyman. And I thought, well, I have to learn how to do this. So I started doing it. And I thought, oh, this is kind of fun. So when they USA Surfing said, we're going to do a US team for stand-up paddling, I just went, great, let's do it. And we went to Peru, and we ended up coming silver to Australia. And I got mocked, seriously, by the Australians for being a turncoat and coaching those fucking Yanks. You bastard, what are you doing? And I'm thinking to myself, shit, I'm just a guy, trying to do something good. Like,
were they really angry about it? Or?
Don't you understand? If you rag on me, you just fucking motivated me. So 2012, 2013, we got silver. 2015, we won the gold medal over Australia in Sayulita in Mexico. And that moment was really sweet, because don't mock the Kanga. Simple. Don't poke the bear. It's just. And so I started doing that. So I'm doing stand-up paddle, and I'm realizing, wow, there's some kind of cool people here. And they're doing some cool stuff. And so I'm looking at the racing, and I'm just going, like, I used to do paddle races. Paddle racing was a big thing back in the 60s, right? Nat Young won paddle races in Sydney. We used to have paddle races. So I'm thinking, this is kind of cool. And then I'm going, well, these are interesting surfboards. I'd like to learn how to ride them in the surf. So have you ever ridden a 14-foot dead flat rocker stand-up paddle race board and ridden waves on it?
Never.
It's kind of really fun. And it's another skill. And then I went, whoa, I'm in this narrow world where only shortboard performance surfing matters. And I'm working with these people, and clearly they're great people, and they're incredible athletes, and their surfing skills are great. Maybe I need to open my mind. Whoa, how revolutionary. Let's think broader here. And I'm just going, wow. So then I started coaching, and I won a world professional SUP surf title with Sean Poynter in the Canary Islands, for God's sake. So now I'm traveling again as a coach. I've done lots of coaching and all this sort of stuff, but I'm traveling and going to Barbados and the Canary Islands and in New York and all over the world as a coach. And we win a world title. And I'm just going, well, this is kind of fun. But the people I'm with, so now I'm friends. My list of people around the world that I'm friends with, because of stand-up paddling, is kind of unbelievable. Like a friend of mine, I just saw a post of Bruno Hasulio. Bruno and his brother Daniel are from Hungary, and they've won ISA world gold medals with stand-up paddle racing. And he lives in Portugal, and he was riding his race board in training on River Douro, I think. It's up the road from you. Yeah. And now I'm talking with him, and just he missed the shorebake rebound, right? So we're just ragging on each other. And this is a Hungarian stand-up paddle racer riding waves in Portugal.
That's on a race board. And you were telling me about Russia as well, and the scene there, right? I mean, that's.
No, I'm just going Europe. So again, my head expands in terms of accepting other types of surfing, and then I watch the explosion of growth based around that standing wave in Munich in the river.
Yeah, the ice buck. It's fun.
Yeah, the ice buck. It's now spawned professional surfers. There are now men and women, German professional surfers that grew up surfing there, that are now sponsored by Rip Curl, and they're training in Portugal, and they're training in the Canary Islands, and they have their own surf league called the Rapid Surf League, where they now go to multiple waves, and it spawned a standing wave company. What's it called? Citywave.Deutsch. It's a standing wave company that's just put up one of their standing waves in Washington State, and Shane Beshan has just starting a contract for a triple wide version in Honolulu, all coming from a freaking river wave, for God's sake, in Germany. I'm just going, this is cool. And I'm thinking, so I have a friend of mine I did a little bit of coaching with called Freddie Meadows, really good QS surfer. He's Swedish. So he lives near Malmo in the Baltic Sea, and has just put out a movie about him chasing a slab in the Baltic Sea. And I'm just going, no, you can't. This can't be true, but it is. Yeah. And I'm friends and have coached with the Ale, from Sardinia. And now I'm friends on Instagram with Surf Sardinia, and there's freaking right point breaks there.
I've heard it gets pretty good. It's right in the middle of the med, but when they get the right wind and everything, it's sort of.
They have two fetches. One is a northwest fetch, which is the wind blowing off of Spain, and another one is a wind blowing off, North Africa. And I'm just going, wow. So then you go to the Russian thing, and I'm thinking, like, I'm connected with this stuff. And so I just make Instagram friends with this woman who's on the Russian stand-up paddle team. And she's learning how to ride waves and stuff in the Black Sea. And then through that connection, I become friends with a guy that runs a surf school in the Baltic Sea in Kaliningrad. Kaliningrad, it's near. I mean, how could this be? And how could you be running a surf school in Russia in the winter? And he is. And so then Elena Prokhorova has just been to the Black Sea to a surf camp on the Black Sea. And then they connected me up with another guy that runs a surf camp in Kamchatka, over near Alaska. And so to me, this
it's endless, right? I mean, there's just
no, it's so exciting to me to have this massive geographical map, like the world map, and to put surf spots on it in all of these places. And so that really is the genesis of what surfing.com is about.
Yeah.
It's about this recognition of all of these other types of surfing as being valid, and it's embracing all of those people doing these different sports, whether it's that Adam Warchol, who just had the biggest wave ever on a sailboard surfing and got hammered at Piahi, is one of the most famous surfers in the world right now. His wipeout. And the story about the Brazilian guy that lives in Maui that teaches breath control is the guy that went over the falls on that wave. And he tested his breath control technique under 6 caught and side waves.
Oh, my God.
And so this surfer didn't want to bail his board because he didn't want to have his board hit the sailboarder. So there's this connection and affinity between surfers out in that lineup. Mm. And then you've got Kai Lenny riding the same wave with a sailboarder who happens to be Jason Polikow, who grew up sailboarding in Torquay in Victoria. You can't make this stuff up, that there's these people from all over the world that are doing these amazing things, and a magic spread of surfing all over the world. So what's interesting to me is these different types of surfing. It's interesting, these people who are adopting surfing and then where it's being done. And that is, in essence, the stories that we are going to tell or are telling in our World of Waves TV show, which we have an audience of 1 million people a week watching that in America.
And when did you guys start that? Like when did World of Waves begin?
October of 2018, we connected up with Kevin Griffith, who registered the URL surfing.com in 1995. And it's been fundamentally doing nothing since then. But a friend of his, Jason Charles, is a TV guy, 30 years in TV syndication. So he's created this network of syndication for World of Waves in America to 120 million homes, an audience of 1 million people a week. So now what is the story about? It's a story about, our host, Daniel Hughes, who's a champion stand-up paddle surfer and a good shortboard surfer, going to these different places and meeting interesting people. And one of our shows, we're in Cape Cod, in October, a show that's coming out in February. He's surfing out in front. I mean, there's a lot of sharks up there, so there's a bit of a shark story. But at Cape Cod in northeast of the United States is this long, sand spit, and all of these really cool beach break waves and really interesting people, one of whom runs an oyster farm on the other side of the Cape. And so he's paddling out and collecting oysters and learning how to shuck oysters. I mean, these are so we're not looking for elite surfers when we do these trips. We're looking for people who surf that have interesting lifestyles that do cool stuff. Yeah. And that's really the essence of what World of Waves is. We did 2 shows in Lake Tahoe because wakeboarders are surfers. Guys that paddle downwind on OC1. Got a phone call. I've got to cancel this thing. It's a connected world, bro. These people, because of, it's very liberating, when you actually decide to embrace all these people and bring them into your house. Just go, oh, that's really cool surfing. It's astonishing that KT Surfing is the brand of surfboards that Kai Lenny rides. And Kai Lenny is riding big wave guns, toe-end boards, shortboards.
Everything pretty much, right? Whatever he can get his hands on. Whatever he can get his hands on, he's kind of testing it out.
Well, Kai Lenny is like mind-boggling talented. But building these boards is a guy that is completely unknown in the shortboard surfing world, but he's like an expert in designing boards for kiteboarding and for sailboarding. And suddenly Kai, because all of in Maui, all of these things are connected. Like everyone does everything. So whether it's big wave surfing out at Jaws, or whether it's wing foiling in the downwind Maliko downwind run, or whether it's surfing shortboard out at Hukipa, or all of these things are all interconnected in Maui, and they're all surfing. Yeah. And so we've embraced all of these people and said, hey, you can come in our house, which is what Surfing.com and World of Waves is about. Hey, Elena Prokhorova from Russia, lives in Moscow. You're a surfer in our world. And when you do that, and you say nice things to people, they respond, and it's actually fun, really fun. My world today is really fun, connecting with people and telling stories, and so I'm not so heavily connected to the World Pro Tour. I mean, I still love it, and it was my baby, but the all of these other things to me are really, really good. And when you think about the economic impact that surfing has had in all of these far-flung places, whether it's Cloud 9 in the Philippines, or whether it's the economic impact in Bali of surfing, or whether it's all of the surf hotels that are being built in the Mentawais, or pure surf camps, running surf camps. A bunch of Germans have surf camps all over Europe, right? Just go, how could this be? But all of these places, when you build a surf camp, you hire local people, and suddenly you've radically altered the economy of that local place. And in many instances, it's a very, very positive thing. So you can lift people out of poverty through surfing. Like, look at the social impact of doing those things. I personally think it's much more important to do things that has a positive social impact than it is to talk about them on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so right. I and we will use our platform of World of Waves and Surfing.com to talk about all these positive things. Like, we do have a social conscience, even though I'm a libertarian, right? Like, heaven forbid. Don't cancel me, mate. So one of the things that I really think is cool about the WSL, they have a big platform, and they have WSL Pure. So they're coming out this month with promotion of 30-30. It's 30% of the world's ocean as marine protected areas in 30 years. Now, can't we all agree that that's a great thing? Yeah. And how can we help WSL promote that is one of the questions. So I actually live in Laguna Beach, which is a marine protected area. So you can't just arbitrarily go and steal a shellfish off the reef. Well, you can't anyhow, because they're gone. What you see in a shore pool, tide pool today, in so many places around the world where all of the sea life's been taken, is shocking to me, because I grew up in Western Australia, where I took my kids to the tide pools, and we saw, mini sharks and fish and a blue ring octopus and all of this really amazing stuff. If you go to the bluff, you see the bluff on all of the, in wintertime in Western Australia, the bluff and Nauru in northern Western Australia. It is absolutely astounding what you see in the water there. It's like the world used to be, where there's such amazing variety of fish and all of these incredible things. Why can't we bring this back? The world has an amazing way of regenerating itself. And so these are the stories that we want to tell. We want to help happen. I mean, how does plastic get in the ocean? Does it just get there? No, people throw their trash away and trash gets dumped in rivers and rivers flow to the ocean.
Mm.
Did you know that there's a surf school on the west coast of India that it's the Ashram Surf School? I mean, who would not want to go to the Ashram Surf School? Come on. And the waves are small, but one of their rivers flows from deep inside India, and the beaches are covered in litter, of plastic litter. And this surf school creates a beach cleanup day for all of their friends, and they come and they clean their beaches. These are the kinds of really, really positive things that can be done by communicating that let's not throw our trash away. Let's not let it get into the rivers. And if it gets in the rivers, let's clean up the beaches, we as a community of surfers. And because we have this global network of people, we need to activate that network, and we want to do those sorts of things.
That's nice. It's good stuff. And I mean, are you like with the projects you guys are working on at the moment? Is that like, you know, are you sort of focused on sort of growing that out with all these destinations on surfing.com? Is that something?
Yeah, we want to give people a platform to promote their small business.
Okay.
In all of these places around the world. So is that Kamchatka Surf School a target for us to put a profile up on surfing.com and promote the idea of going to Kamchatka to go surf? Absolutely. I would love to see us be able to use surfing.com as a tool to rise the tide economically for all of these small businesses all around the world. We don't need Billabong and Quicksilver to get any bigger. But we do need the guy that's running a surf lesson, like the university surf school on the beach in the Canary Islands. We could help him get bigger. Pure surf camps, let's get more people. Kandui Surf Lodge. All of these things are small businesses that could do with some marketing and promotional help. And we want to be the platform to help them, tell the stories. Yep. Tell the stories. I mean, follow Kandui on Instagram and watch every day the amazing waves that they have at that place.
Yeah, it's unbelievable over there.
Unbelievable. Hold on 1 second.
No worries.
Are you fucking stupid? I guess we need to edit that.
No worries. We're good. So what's I was just like looking at what's the best way of everyone to follow, you know, what you guys are up to and sort of, you know, follow what you're doing as well.
Well, we're a startup business, and we're going to be making a lot of changes and growth with surfing.com and World of Waves during 2021. But you can go to surfing.com and look what we have now. You can watch our first 6 shows. We have another 4 original shows coming out in February. And the oh my God. You saw the mongrel come out, man. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Look, you know, a mum fighting with her son. Yeah. What could be more normal than that? And we want to grow this network, and we have new features rolling out over the next few months that will sort of show. But you know, in my mind, I see where the world. I see a world map behind you.
Yeah.
In my mind, I've lived that world map. And I love the way that world map is constantly expanding with surfing. And I love the passion of all of these people out there that are doing this cool stuff, that are creating new stories that are infinitely more interesting than some kid throwing an air in the BSR wave park. I mean, we need to, in my mind, recognize this astonishing array of amazing people that are populating the world of surfing that we've created, and we need to welcome them into the house. We need to say, you guys are cool. We want to hear your stories. And that to me, what could be the culmination of my life's work is to illuminate these incredible surf stories, that all of the things that we've done over the last 50 years has captured the imagination, lit the light, that's made people just go, oh, we can. Wouldn't it be cool if we could? Well, why not? Have a go. And suddenly you have people in Russia and in Sweden and Norway and Iceland and in Australia. Look at Namibia. Holy moly, who knew that wave was there? Like, where the fuck is Namibia? Yeah. Is it just a spin-off from South Africa? What's happening in South Africa? There's another really cool thing that's happening is the Corona has done a series of really neat little videos illuminating women that are breaking new barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this, what's her name, Jan Ruffy, I think it is, who's a South African black woman who's learning how to free dive amongst the kelp forests. There's the good longboard surfer in Hainan in China. Like, in lots of cultures, women don't have the freedom to live their lives and express themselves in a way that we have that freedom in our Western societies. So I'm friends, the Black Girls Who Surf. Mm-hmm. This woman is sort of promoting this idea of women being free to go surfing. She's in Senegal at the moment. She has friends in Ghana and Nigeria that it's learning to surf and do yoga on the beach and all of these things. This, to me, is simply an extension of the world that we began, like when I started the ASP and invited France in and Brazil in, because it lit the fire of possibility. And it spread like wildfire and continues to do so. And so this is where we can have economic impact. We can stimulate social change in a really, really positive way by lifting people up and telling their stories. And we can also, on top of all of that, invite more people from more disciplines into this world of surfing, which makes the mosaic we're creating to be so spectacularly more interesting than who's winning the world tour.
Yeah.
And so can we be part of that group of companies that helps to collaborate and elevate surfing as a collective group of people? Or do we fight tooth and nail over every scrap that's on the table? I personally think that collaborating with Surfline, collaborating with WSL, with Surfing.com, with Magic Seaweed, with all of these other companies around the world, and raising the tide of what's possible in surfing and inviting more people in. Like, that's kind of the message. That's the life I want to live in the latter part of my life.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think now, obviously, with what's happened this year with COVID, there seems to be the possibilities that afterwards, it's sort of it's opened up, and it's almost seems like not as competitive. So we're thinking with companies and platforms working together, almost for the greater good, right?
It is for the greater good, but there's an economic advantage, and COVID has demonstrated. In a time of crisis, where all of these multitudinous opportunities for people to do everything and travel everywhere are cancelled, stopped, what did people do? A lot of people, more than ever, went surfing. Mm. And are they going to stop surfing? No. They dipped their foot in the water and went, oh, this is kind of nice. wow, the beach is cool. Isn't it exciting to ride a wave? So I'm saying all of those people out there buying wave storms and other softboards and coming to the beach, welcome. Welcome into our amazing world of surfing. There's some rules to follow, but we'll teach you because we're stoked to have you. And the business is growing because it's growing at the surf shop level, selling boards, selling wetsuits. So all of these small businesses are thriving and prospering because of this new influx of people. And of those guys, it's going to be a very, very big percentage of these new surfers are going to go, well, I need a better board. I'm going to buy a hard board. So where do I go? They go to a shaper because it's cool. And so suddenly, where the world has been dominated by the big three, Quicksilver, Billabong, and Rip Curl, now there's opportunity for all of these small players to rise. So how can we help them rise with this tide? It's a really, really interesting and exciting time.
Yeah.
So I'm amazingly optimistic. And all of a sudden, I can be live on all of these social platforms. We're doing a podcast, and I'm in Laguna Beach, and you're in Portugal. And the possibility for us to impact and make change occur in a really, really neat and positive way has never been better. And that's, my message is I'm kind of stoked. I love doing this stuff. I love talking about surfing. I've spent, 55 years out there surfing. And if I can spend another 10 or 20 years, evangelizing for the exciting prospect of surfing in all of these places in all these different ways, what an incredible time.
Yeah. I think so. It's going to be, it's there's so many, obviously, I like with the maps in Portuguese, I'm trying to learn Portuguese, but whenever I look behind me, you just, the mind goes and you imagine, what kind of waves there are, everywhere. Right?
Yeah.
So
well, you can,
it's a good sign.
I want to make the point. If you can dream it, you can do it. And that's the amazing thing that's possible in our world. And so all of those people out there that, going, oh, I don't know, I'm saying, yes, you can. Get off your ass, go to the beach, learn to surf, open a surf shop, sell some wetsuits online, do all of these cool things because everything like this is totally possible today.
That's true. Awesome. Ian, it was so good having you on the show and hearing all your stories. And yeah, it's going to be great watching, what you guys are up to with surfing.com. And yeah, looking forward to seeing the new episodes of World of Waves as well when they come out.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Yeah, we're really stoked. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thanks, Ian. Cheers.
Bye.